Hey, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. My takes on all things considerable. Welcome to Emil Amok's Takeout. I was so despondent yesterday while the news was happening that I said, just rerun Monday's show. I mean, the government was falling apart. I mean, the Republicans were, uh, let's see, what is the metaphor should we use? They were self-decapitating the self-decapitating Republicans. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, I couldn't believe that they would do that. But this is 2023 politics. You got to believe this is what happens. And I thought back to my time when I worked for a time on the Hill. I worked with Congressman Norm Minette, then Congressman Norm Minette, a speaker, not speaker, but secretary, cabinet member, Minetta. He later became, that was his highest office, the late, great Norm Minetta. And I just remember the things about him not wanting to be part of leadership. He wanted to be he wanted to control his own little fiefdom, which was the Public Works and Transportation Committee at the time. I remember talking to him, just, informally chatting about, why didn't he go into leadership? Why didn't he? Well, this is why you don't go into leadership, because you need to have the kind of stomach for what we saw yesterday, which is the total failure of it was a failure of leadership, but it was a failure of people who are voted to be representatives to govern. It was their failure to come together to make our government work. It was sad. It was sad to see that happen. And like I said, when I worked in Congress, it was back in the 90s. And this is always what happens, right? Over budget. I mean, you know that this happens each and every time. There's a problem with budget. Are we going to shut down? But it got worse. 89, 90, 91, it got worse because of gridlock. And it's only, this was the path that we were headed for. If you look back in history, it's surprising it took this long, but this is the first time ever a House Speaker was removed. So it's a sad day. It's a sad day. Today we're going to bring on Professor Emeritus Daniel Phil Gonzalez. He'll come talk to me about this and about other things. I also want to talk about Filipino American History Month, because this is Filipino American History Month. And usually this is, enough for October, except this time around, where we have the failure of government, plus we have the failure of leadership, even among the Democrats. And I point to Dianne Feinstein's replacement that Gavin Newsom appointed the other day. There are two words that come to mind when I describe what Gavin Newsom did, Governor Gavin Newsom, who I ordinarily would like. I mean, he's having a moment in a way, because especially after the Republican debate, people are pointing to Gavin Newsom and saying, "Oh, he's kind of like the surrogate for Biden." I like that for Gavin Newsom. I mean, you look around at all the Democrats, the young Democrats, and who are there? Who is out there that people can point to and say, "Oh yeah, there's a guy who represents the Democratic bench." But Gavin Newsom this week, on the same week that we pay our respects to Dianne Feinstein, did something. I saw one piece that I read called it craven, a craven selection. Craven meaning cowardly. I use another C word in my ALDEF column, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I call it cynical. I take a cynical view of what Gavin Newsom did, and what he did was cynical because it was self-serving. It was the absence of leadership. If he wanted to lead, he would have said, "Look, we have three people out there who are running, and I'm going to be true to my promise of having an African American woman, and I'm going to choose someone who is the best person for the job and fits all those requirements. And it happens to be Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee. That's all Gavin Newsom needed to say this week. Instead, he appointed LaFonza Butler. No knock on Butler. She's a rising Politico. She's not a legislator. She doesn't have the same kind of experience behind the scenes. She was not, Barbara Lee was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Barbara Lee was the only member of Congress to stand up to the authorization of military force in Afghanistan in 2001. Barbara Lee has shown backbone and courage, and instead of being honored by given a real boost by Gavin Newsom, who is acting as an authority of, I'm thinking of the people, I'm thinking about the Democrats, I'm thinking about the Republic and the state of California. Instead of making a principled decision and saying, yeah, Barbara Lee, we're going to let you fill in for Feinstein. She was the most qualified. Instead, Gavin Newsom takes a cynical approach and makes the best decision for him. Not the best decision for California, not the best decision for the nation. And look, it's political. It's if you believe in the cynicism in government that's around these days, or that's the only way to look at government these days after the last 24, 48 hours, you'd say, well, Gavin Newsom, he's kind of a genius. He was sort of hemmed into a corner. And what did he do? He didn't pick Adam Schiff, who would have been maybe Feinstein's pick. He didn't pick Katie Porter, who would have been Progressive's pick. He didn't pick Barbara Lee, who is the consensus pick, and also a black woman to fulfill his promise. Instead, he searched for any other black woman, and he found one, LaFonza Butler. And how this is like someone in HR saying, well, here's a double minority who can fill the bill. Because that's happened in the past 20, 30 years. But here it's like a triple minority. Black, woman, lesbian, boom. LGBTQ, boom. Let's see it criticize this one. Not criticizing LaFonza Butler. She may end up being a good candidate, but she gets the power of incumbency now because she got the nod from Gavin Newsom. That's cynical. That's craven. If Newsom wanted to show that he was capable of leading now, he would have said, look, here's the best person for the job, Barbara Lee. Instead, he said, here's the best person for me, because that way I don't have to catch any bull from the Schiff crowd, the Katie Porter crowd, the Barbara Lee crowd, and I don't even care about that Filipino guy, Emil. I'm going with LaFonza Butler. Boy, Gavin Newsom blew it. He blew it. That's all you could say. And on the week that we honor Dianne Feinstein is in state, City Hall. That's how many of us got to know her. I got to know her as a supervisor. In fact, one of the things I did not put in my column in the Aldef blog is the very first award-winning column I ever wrote. It was for the Lowell High School newspaper. And I talked about seeing Dianne Feinstein and Deep Throat, yes, the revered pornography film of the 70s starring Linda Lovelace. I saw Deep Throat and Dianne Feinstein on the same day, and I wrote about it. And it won an award. Maybe it was the same week. I'm not sure. But at the time, Dianne Feinstein was this prim and proper. She was a kind of a very formidable. She had what you call she was a strong, you could tell she has like a kind of a Maggie Thatcher kind of, what is it? The demeanor. It's maternal. It's strong, even when she was a supervisor. And this was one of her first supervisor gigs. She spoke at Lowell High School, and I think later that night, I managed to I don't know how, but I saw Deep Throat. I wrote about it. It was my column, and I won. I won some big press award locally, and that was the beginning of my coverage of Dianne Feinstein. And then later, I covered her professionally when she was a mayor and as a senator, and then I also in this ALDEF column, I talk about those moments where we talked about, when she's the candidate or she's the politician, you're the journalist, and then there are those moments when you're off camera and you're just real people relating to each other. And I just, there were some moments like that. Not many, but there were some moments where we both acknowledged that we were human beings. And when that happens, it was a special thing. It says, yes, I see you, DiFi. I see you're a real person. I see you're a native San Franciscan just like me. I see we have the same hopes and dreams for San Francisco. That's why you're the leader, right? I don't know if we exactly had the same hopes and dreams. I mean, patrician, me, son of a Filipino cook. But because of my position as a journalist, I was able to see her and connect with her. And that's a privilege of being a journalist. It's a privilege of being given that front row seat. So I honor her on this day that she lies in rest in City Hall. I pay my respects to her. I wrote that column in the ALDEF blog. I also talk about how we shared a stage in Lowell High School. I talked about this with Dan the other day. It was a commencement address. I thought it was being funny. I held up a toilet plunger. I had a prop, and I thought, I'm going to be fun. I thought it was funny. I lost some of the crowd. I will admit, I lost some of the crowd. Dianne Feinstein, she got up and she won the crowd back because she was a cheerleader for democracy. I mean, she knew how to deliver. And there she was, mayor. She's up there. I'm the local TV reporter made good who might have cracked a few bad jokes, but she brought the audience together. It was a great moment. I'll never forget it. It was a master class for me in terms of how to talk to an audience, how to have them eat out of the palm of your hand. Dianne Feinstein showed that to me. Anyway, some Dianne Feinstein memories. There's got to be a lot of them as people file through City Hall today in San Francisco. Let me bring up Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend. I guess we're colleagues. I say colleagues. He's a professor emeritus, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies. Dan, are you there?
I am here. And you are a lecturer emeritus.
I'm a lecturer emeritus. That's right. And so look, it's good to have you here. I thought that we go on Wednesday. Usually you come on Friday, but I thought if we come on Wednesday, we'll just play this all the way through Saturday.
Sure.
Because we're going to talk about something important. We're going to talk about Filipino American history. But before we get to that, tell me about your thoughts about Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she's come back, and it's sad. It's sad if you're a San Franciscan like me. It's a sad day. She was an effective leader.
She was. I wish that, like in the instance of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that the Democratic Party had been paying attention enough, especially locally, to start grooming the next generation or two, right? To run for office, and that she would gracefully step aside after grooming 2 or 3 people to retire while there was momentum, while we had a Democratic governor, so you can make the appropriate appointment. So that's what I wish for all of the aging group.
Well, Dan, it's true though.
You're a generation in front of us, man, and I'm pretty freaking old. You know,
Yeah.
so
Well,
so could you make room for people at least in their 60s or so?
yeah. Well, this is the thing about when Dianne Feinstein, when she passed, and you look around and you see what's left, and you say, "Well, what happened?" It's like
Yeah.
no, there's no one else
Anybody
like
there?
her.
Is anybody there?
Yeah,
Hello.
there's no. I mean, and
Echo,
this is
echo, echo.
well, this is why we revere her. She was an effective leader. She comes out of the
She was. There's no question about that.
Philip Burton machine, and then of course out of the Burton machine that came
Even
Willie
leave John
Brown.
out of it, right? The Burton machine
Right.
overall. Yeah.
And Burton he was congressional, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and then Burton, when he passed, they passed it on to his wife
Yeah.
Sala,
Sala.
and it was like they had the machine politics going. And in some ways, people say that was the problem with San Francisco. It was too beholden to that whole machine politics. But in lieu of that, what happened? Where did the other folks come from that would take their place and then would have the same kind of stature in terms of that there's a leader cut from the same cloth who can lead in this city. You just don't have that.
Well, I think there were some people. I mean, obviously Willie Brown was in that mix.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know what your opinion is on this, but the reason that term limits got support
Mm,
from a broad swath of the California voters
mm,
was because Willie Brown was such an effective speaker of the
yeah.
assembly.
Yeah.
He didn't move up to the Senate. He was smart. He stayed in the assembly. He knew he was going to get reelected ad infinitum
Yeah. He stayed
and
local. Stayed local.
stayed local. He was a great champion for San Francisco. He took care of the African American community. He paid attention to the rest of the people of color as well. I
Mhm,
remember him attending events across the board for Asian Americans,
mhm.
for Latinos, even for Native Americans. He had critical opinion of some of the stuff that we were doing, but most of the time he was right, and he was absolutely competent, and that's exactly why term limits came to being in California is
Yeah.
because Republicans hated him and they feared, what he represented, which was competent leadership for all
Yeah.
coming from one of those BIPOC communities, right?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't call them BIPOC back then. We call them colored people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true. And, I had my problems with Willie Brown as much as I want to praise him here. But,
Right, yeah.
he was
Most of them
there.
had to do with his car. He had that hot ass Porsche.
No, he was effective, and now you have the next generation for Democrats coming out of San Francisco and California is Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
and
Unfortunately, there were some competent people coming out of the Asian American communities. Fiona Ma's competent, but then she's got a minor scandal going on right now.
yeah,
I haven't mined my connections in her office yet to find out really what's going on.
yeah,
But
she's the treasurer of California.
yeah, that's right. There are a couple of people who are contenders, right, for maybe attorney general or something like that. But depending on what Mr. Bonta wants to do, that's going
Yeah.
to be very interesting.
Well, this is the thing. Rob Bonta, everyone wants to get him to run for governor.
Right.
So far, the only one who's I've heard announce is Tony Thurman, who's the board of supervisors,
Yeah. Yeah.
board of or education superintendent.
Superintendent of schools.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure how that race is going to shake out, but I think Bonta is the hope for Asian Americans and Filipino Americans going forward. I think he's like maybe 10 years away, but it's going to happen because you look at, well, who comes after him? I mean,
I think it might be closer for him than that. It depends on whether or not Biden or the Democrats win the presidency and the House of Representatives.
yeah.
I'm assuming they're going to keep the Senate, but
All right. So now we're going into prognostication, and that's cool, but
Okay, you want to be with DiFi? Okay. I'll give you three things that I'm critical of her about.
Yeah,
Now, overall, do I praise her? Yes, I do.
yeah,
Okay. Do I praise her as a liberal? No, I don't. She's a centrist, but she did things and was absolutely able to do what she did.
yeah.
Right, the good things, gun safety, that kind of stuff, um, immigration issues, right? Because she was seen as centrist, and so she could work both sides of the aisle. Okay, so this sounds reminiscent again of Biden's claim, right, to fame as a long term senator and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's legitimate praise.
Well,
Okay,
this is also just the political way. I mean, you can't just stay on one side, keep alienating and polarizing. At some point, you have
yes, but
to come
who's
in the
who's
middle.
most which party is most responsible for causing that polarization?
Well, I would say it's the Republicans.
For sure.
Yeah,
And that's not something that has occurred within the last 20 years or even 30 years. That was something that began even before Nixon, but which was enhanced, right, because of the Watergate scandal.
yeah, and now
Right?
it's even we've got a scandal even worse than Watergate. I mean,
This is worse than anything within our memory for sure, and it may be one of the worst things that ever has happened in the history of this society, of this
yeah,
entire country.
American
Okay,
democracy. Yes,
you
exactly.
know,
And here's something that's interesting, and this ties us into Filipino American history
and DiFi.
and DiFi. But David Remnick in the New Yorker today just came out with an essay.
He's a
He
good.
said
Yeah, he's
that
good.
we've got to pay attention to all these threats coming from Donald Trump because
Yeah.
the violence, the threats against General Milley, all the things that have prompted the gag order in this current fraud case, they're all real.
Yeah.
And who is the example that David Remnick holds up and says this is why Trump is doing this? He holds up Rodrigo Duterte. Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines, and he uses in his new essay just came out. He says, you look at Duterte, you look at what Duterte did, and you look at this idea. He quotes a Filipino reporter who is coming out with a book called Some People Deserve Killing. This is the attitude of an autocrat, and this is the direction of American democracy if Trump prevails. And it was a direction of Philippine democracy. And what can we say except you look at a harbinger for America, it's Philippine democracy. And you see how they have sidestepped and gone back and forth between autocracy and democracy. It's their mess right now. It's a democracy, but you have the restoration of the Marcoses, and you have an electorate that has forgotten the past. So I'm just saying, I'm glad to see mainstream guys like Remnick in the New Yorker try to use the Philippines to point out what is happening here in America. Because if people don't start paying attention to Donald Trump and his threats, we're going to see the same thing happen in the United States that happened in the Philippines. No one has ever been that blind. I mean, me in the ethnic press, I've said that. I've said that
That's
in my columns.
pretty freaking. Yeah, that is blunt for a white boy.
Yeah. Well, not just for a white boy, but someone who is as respected as Remnick.
Yeah.
I mean, and
that's a step beyond follows. Remember all the stuff that follows.
Look, Remnick is a Harvard guy in his 60s. He's got all the bona fides. He's a great journalist, but very few people have turned to the Philippines as an example. And this is a good time to do it. Filipino American History Month, that he publishes this essay in the New Yorker, because I have always said that the Philippines in the last, say, year to 6 months has shown the direction where American democracy will go if we're not careful, if we are not vigilant and we don't fight for real democracy. We're going to go the way of the Philippines, and it's the way of the strong man. And
your sound just dropped out on me. Let me double check what's going on here.
Yeah, you look at the way that Trump is acting in court, and You are seeing a man who is disrespectful for the institutions of democracy. This is where American democracy is going if people continue to say, hey, Donald Trump, he is the standard bearer for the Republicans. So,
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Because
yeah, I
your
can
mic
hear you
is.
okay. Man, you need to you get American made goods over there
I'm going to have to.
instead of relying on, what do you
Okay,
got?
there it goes. Okay, it's back now.
Okay. All
So
right. So,
I had to crank up. I blew out my ears, man. I had to crank up my volume.
okay.
Anyway,
All right.
uh,
So Remnick, I think, is a cautionary tale, but about time that people start seeing the Philippines as related to the U.S. in a way
sure.
that,
I love the way he opens up.
yeah,
He opens up right on the money. Patricia Evangelista. Some people need killing.
yeah,
Can't wait to get it. I'm gonna check on Amazon as soon as we're through talking.
yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, you had two other points about Feinstein.
Okay. One. Uh, she was condescending towards the Filipino American
Yeah,
community,
yeah,
and to a certain extent, not only do I understand that, okay, I accept that. All right. Why? Because what she said was on one day when there was a group of us, I was in that group, and
yeah.
I was questioned as to whether or not I was covering the meeting as a journalist or just as a
Oh,
member of
right.
the community. And I asked which one gets me in the door, and they said, "Don't turn on that camera."
Uh,
so,
well, all right. So
so
the
I got in the door, and as we were waiting, I heard her say to her aide, who said, "Well, there's a group of Filipinos. You got a serious meeting come up, but there's a group of Filipinos that want to meet with you." And she goes, "It's okay. It'll only take a short moment. They usually only want to get a picture taken."
all right.
And so I
Yeah,
left a little bit of a nasty taste in my mouth.
yeah.
Number
There's,
two, and maybe even more importantly, she felt obligated to host the Marcoses
oh, yeah. That's right.
at a very high level as distinguished guests after she accepted the invitation from them to go to the Philippines. And I
Yeah,
advised people very close to her that were members of her staff that was not a good idea. I advised members of the bar, and not only the bar, but the bench,
yeah.
that it wouldn't be a good idea to be identified with them for the future. And people went anyway because it was a big deal, right? It was a
Yeah.
freebie. What made it attractive for a lot of the lessers, not the mayor of San Francisco or the governor of the state or anybody like that, but people who are members of commissions,
Yeah.
that have
Well,
significant sway and authority from within the Filipino American community. What made it attractive is it was a freebie.
yeah.
They're getting free, and
What it shows,
that was
though,
even worse.
yeah. What it shows is the power of the Marcoses to, they were in control of how people responded and reacted here in the United States. You know, and
Is that going to come up on this weekend when we cover?
of
Oh,
course.
okay.
I mean, it's got to. I mean, if it doesn't, then the whole thing's a
we,
sham.
we hadn't done our job, or
Yeah.
no, wait, I'm just a hanger on, so you hadn't done your job, man. You
All
know,
right. So, all right. So we talked about DiFi. Look briefly, and we talked about the
oh,
replacement.
she did appoint me to two different committees.
Oh well,
One was
you got something.
mental health and public health advisory board,
Mental health. Why? Because
was
yours
the
is
content,
compromised.
and also the International Hotel Block Development
Oh,
advisory board. And so it wasn't like I didn't know her and she didn't know me. It was like, yeah, okay, that's really cool that you did that. It was good for the interest of the community, the Filipino American community, and for the community in general. But at the same time, I can have my criticisms, and I
yeah.
had been a long-term critic
All right.
of Marcos.
But
I witnessed his first election campaign. I was in
yeah,
the Philippines in 1965,
yeah,
and yes, I saw the corruption day-to-day basis in the Philippines. And yes, he ran on an anti-corruption, anti-crime platform. But I also saw the way Filipinos practiced politics,
Yeah, which is
subtractive politics, bribery, everything else. I mean, it was right there in your face. I mean, if
it's
you're
corruption.
watching anything, it was going on.
Well, what you say about anti-crime, law and order, and that's the same kind of deal that Trump is the anti-crime guy, and he's
Nixon
got
said the same thing.
yeah, he's got 91 counts uh, of indicted on in four
91,
different cases,
91 felonies, yes.
91 felonies. So look, this is where we are
It
in
sounds like that old song, right? 99 bottles
not
of beer
not
on
yet
the wall.
99
91 bottles of beer,
no not
91
99
felonies.
problems and
Yeah, I know. And then, but
so,
you got 1/4 of the American voting public that says, nah,
yeah.
nah, it ain't happening.
Well, this is the problem.
It's not real.
All right, before we talk about Filipino American History 101, which is
Okay, we got to
what I
do
want to
that.
get to, I want to
Yeah.
talk about the other news. First of all, I think we've taken our shot at Gavin Newsom. We like him, but God, he had an opportunity to
Yeah,
really
that
take
was
some
not
leadership.
that was not cool.
He did not take some leadership. He should have
I still
appointed
think
Barbara
he's
Lee.
smart as hell and really good looking. So
Oh, well, that, his hair is perfect and his choice had to be perfect. And that was the problem with his choice.
no,
He
it's
was
a little
bringing,
too long. It's a little too long, and it obviously casts him permanently as a liberal of some sort. It's a little
uh,
too long, man.
see, I think, I thought Gavin Newsom would be ready for his close up, but I think, this by picking LaFonza Butler and avoiding the controversy, avoiding
Uh-huh.
the courageous choice to pick Barbara Lee, I think he showed exactly where he's at. He's really the same Gavin Newsom that we've always known, and we're going to have to deal with that if he is the standard bearer for the Democratic Party. All right, so let me talk about the other bit of news that came out to see the Republicans decapitate
Themselves,
himself or
according to
themselves.
WSJ, the
Yeah,
Wall Street Journal.
yeah. I
They
I
cut
just
their own head off.
I just think it's sad that the Republicans and they cut it off and they said, well, we're just going to walk around carrying our head or just have no head, and that's going to be it. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have an approach, and now
No,
they've
they're
got
gonna hunt us. They're gonna hunt us.
yeah, and now Jim Jordan, right? He
They
says,
become the headless horseman.
yeah, yeah. Jim Jordan wants to be speaker, and Scalise wants to be. I
Oh
think.
man, can you imagine that dude to speak?
Well, I mean, it'll be WrestleMania. It'll be WrestleMania.
Will he
I
ever
just think,
wear a jacket? Will he ever wear a friggin' jacket? Or
yeah.
is he just going to be shirtless, and wear it 3/4 length long sleeves like I got right here?
I don't know. Yeah, a 3/4 length isn't bad. Hey, so like, here's the thing. Um, they're going to give it time. I hope that the Republicans just come to their senses and say, bipartisanship isn't bad, and working together. Because even the McCarthy. I mean, it's funny that a lot of people saying, well, the Democrats should have helped out with McCarthy, but McCarthy was like not a reliable ally. It's like, why
he
would
was he
you want to
was
see?
he was distrusted on 3 sides.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
The
only thing
only side left is Jesus.
yeah.
I mean, and I haven't heard yet.
Well, the only thing that really made sense was that the Democrats held their ground, and they see let's let the Republicans figure out what to do, and then we can deal with whoever the Republicans come up with, and they come up with nothing. They get rid of McCarthy. They don't save him. They get rid of
Did you
him.
see McCarthy on the Sunday shows before he got off?
Yeah,
Before he got off, he said, "Did you see the Democrats? The Democrats." And the Sunday show host all said, "That's not what we saw.
yeah.
That's
Well,
not
look,
what,
I mean,
that didn't happen."
we know that McCarthy is a liar, and we know that we saw him act after January 6th. Oh, he
Oh my God!
despised Trump, and then he
Oh
kissed
my
the
God!
ring, and then and I think that
He
if
must be
you
held to account.
well
Three
if
weeks later, it was uh, you know,
well
don't mind the former president's hand on my butt. It's
yeah
not what you think.
well look, here's the thing. Here's the thing about McCarthy. McCarthy he relied on Trump all the way through, and guess who didn't come to save him yesterday? Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump could have.
He's a
Don't
loser now. He's a
well,
loser.
well,
Trump don't back losers, man.
this is the thing with the Republicans. If you've got as your head the guy whose face is now in trial for fraud and facing, these 91 counts and four criminal indictments.
Well, the fraud has already been proven.
Right,
The judge has already come to a decision regarding fraud. He's committed fraud
right. But he's in court now,
for the
and
penalty phase. He's in
right,
there for the penalty phase. How much will we tag you for?
yeah,
And the answer is, even if it's less than 250 million, he ain't got the money,
yeah.
man.
Well, that's true. I mean, he's going to fundraise. He's got to fund. Well, anyway, my point is when he's the standard bearer and he doesn't come to save you, and the Republicans can't figure out on their own. I just think this is a bad. I don't see how the Republicans get any, how they get any lift from the public. How can you be a member of the public and see how the Republicans are and say that's the party for me? I just don't see that.
For 3/4 of the American public, you're probably right. At best it would be a difficult decision to make. Okay,
Yeah.
but there's a certain segment, a large segment of the American public that is Republican no matter what.
Right,
Okay?
but still just a third. Still just a third. I mean,
I don't know.
it's still
I think it's bigger than that. I think the Republican, no matter what, and the thing that's alienating them is this mountain of evidence against Trump. So it comes down to a third, or maybe even only a quarter,
yeah,
right? Because of all everything that's happening. There's still an element that's even bigger than the residue after Watergate. The people who are still saying Nixon is not guilty of any of that stuff,
well,
when
yeah,
he said years later, if the president does it, it's not a crime,
right, right.
and
Well,
so I in my classes I make the. Do you see the connection?
yeah, well,
Good social scientists look for patterns, right? And here's a pattern established by a Republican former president of the United States, where he says if the president does it, it ain't a crime,
yeah.
man. Okay.
Well, this is why if you are just a casual observer of politics, I mean, I don't see how you can help but from being turned off by this whole
Yeah, but then you know
going
what they
on.
do? They use it just like my generation, right? A lot of people said, "Tune in, drop out."
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh
Tune
yeah,
in. You're a little
that
young.
was
Yeah,
Leary, right?
yeah. Tune in,
Timothy
drop out.
Leary.
Right? Join a freaking commune and
Yeah.
have
Well,
sex and drugs all day.
or actually, there are people who drop out and say, oh, "Look, I'm just if you're a conservative and you're free market money person, you say I'm just into making money and for myself. I don't care
Well,
about politics."
absolutely.
I mean, there are already people like that out
Yes,
there.
and a lot of the younger generation is like that.
Yeah,
You know,
say politics. Oh, that's
this stuff
something that
doesn't. How does it affect me? All I want to do is make some money and be happy. That's
right,
it.
and then it's just a game that goes on, and then they have to worry about things like fiscal policy and interest rates and taxes, and then they say, "How do I get involved and how do I take care of it?" And then they get worried. They worry about the roads that they're driving in, the potholes that are screwing up their Teslas, and then they say, "Oh, I got to get into politics," because there's a whole group of people who just believe that politics and governance is BS.
Yep. Well, oh, good move. That was quick. You were quick on the
Yeah.
button, man.
Well, I know how to do this, but I mean that whole thing, the anti-governance movement, conservative, small c, small g government. Let's get rid of the government. I mean, there's some state legislators who only work like 1 month a year, something like that, because
Sure.
they don't believe in government. And they want to bring this to the national level, to the federal level, and this is
And
a
they
bad
want term
move.
limits. They want term limits at the national level. All of that good stuff.
And this is a bad thing. And people have to see that. Well, wait a minute, government is there to serve the people.
No. See, not only are the people turned off against government, they see government as essentially you have to assume that government is bad.
Yeah,
Okay. That's the basic assumption. Government is bad, and the proof of that is that they keep not addressing the real issues that face us every day. But there was a time up until very recently that a majority of Americans did not believe that climate change was real.
right.
They're starting to believe now because the East Coast is getting wiped out on an annual basis, just like the Mississippi River,
Yeah,
area gets
yeah,
wiped out on sometimes twice a year.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and remember when they used to say it's 100-year storm,
yeah,
right? it's a 100-year event, and
Happened
now
every
it's
10
a
years now.
2-year event.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
No, well, look, the thing is, we have to rely on government to save us.
That's right.
And but I'm not saying it's got to be 100%. I'm not saying
No,
that there can't
they have to
be some.
effectively address the problem in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. And people are correct. If they're not capable of doing that, there's something wrong with government. The
Yeah. So,
problem is they're not recognizing their own responsibility in that regard. They're not
um,
recognizing the fact that they are electing locals, and it works its way. All politics is local. That's
yep.
not BS.
Yeah.
It works
And,
its way up into the system, and we end up having one party that their whole goal is to make the other party look bad so they get reelected. That's it. That's
right.
the entire goal.
Right.
Is to
Because they don't.
discredit
They're
the other
not
party.
interested. Yeah, they're not interested in governing. They're only interested in throwing
They
the
don't have
monkey
real
wrench into
policy.
everything.
They don't have real policy. They look at the immigration problem and they say, look what's happening. All these people, hundreds of thousands of people come across the border, and we're not doing a damn thing about it, which is a lie. But are we being effective about how we deal with that? No,
Yeah.
we're not. And so there's
Right.
legitimacy, from the ground, right? That's a legitimate criticism. Okay. How about this one? How about
Spending.
the deep state?
Yeah.
The
Oh,
deep
the deep
state.
state. That's BS.
Okay, so the deep state says there's a lot of career people that have lifetime jobs in government, and that's the deep state. We got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
We can't have people like that.
That's like
You
getting
got
rid of the girders and the foundation of old buildings.
sure.
The so-called deep state. That's what keeps government working. But they've turned it into a negative, so that
That's
you
right.
got to get
That's
rid of
what
all
keeps
those.
government going in
Yeah.
spite of the stupidity that occurs at the political level.
So
Okay, at
this
the
is
elected level.
this is what we have here. We have this anti-government BS rhetoric, and so between we have what I call we're in a 2C era, an era of cynicism and an era of craven political responses. Craven is like people who
Self-interest,
is
absolute self-interest.
well, craven really has to do with a lack of courage, that leads to a self-interest that leads to bad decisions, bad policies. But the other C word is cynical, and I when I heard this word tossed around, oh, you're cynical, and a lot of people don't understand cynical. Was it? I mean, I'm distrustful of something that's happening. I'm skeptical. Am I cynical? And here's a definition of cynical: believing that people are motivated purely by self-interest, distrustful of human sincerity or integrity. That's the first meaning, and that's if you look at people like that, that's a bad way to be. I mean, I think we all should be loving, caring, and giving, but when
Okay,
people
give me adjective. Give me adjective number 2, please.
uh, concerned only with one's own interests and typically disregarding accepted or appropriate standards in order to achieve them. And
Aha, aha. So, sir, I submit that we consider both of those elements,
yeah,
right, as a singular definition of
of cynicism.
cynicism.
Yeah,
All right.
I think so. I mean, we're being honest when we look at the people who are acting on our behalf or acting on behalf of people who have elected them, and they're making the wrong decision. Not just they're making the wrong decision for people like me and you. Maybe make the right decision for the people who elected them, but moreover, they're making the right decision for themselves, who want to preserve their
First of all,
elected.
do you think that the typical Trump voter has an ideological foundation?
I don't. If you ask them, I don't think they would. They would know.
So, what is the basis of their
The basis is get out of my life, get out of my pocketbook. It's a kind of a weird libertarian twist.
libertarian? Yes.
Yeah, and it's a weird kind of like I don't want government involved in anything. Oh, and give me some law and order, by the way, and we'll
Yeah.
get rid of all the bad guys, and the bad guys
Yeah.
include people of color who do
Yeah.
come to the United States without green
Yeah,
cards.
except for the FBI and the CIA, you got to
Ah,
you got to wipe them out. And the Department of Justice, we can do without them. They're
see,
turning their power of investigation and prosecution against us,
well, that's
against
the
us.
thing. And
Even though I have not been indicted for
yeah,
a crime,
and
even
he
though
would.
I don't claim to have billions of dollars, which I don't. Even though I have not committed these kinds of frauds with
Yeah,
deep effect, right? on the economics of the society, and people still don't understand that. They say,
Yeah.
what's his defense? There's no victim here.
Yeah.
The banks
Well,
weren't hurt.
but th-
What are you
but
talking about?
this is the sad thing, that now we have Trump going against the military, going after General Milley, going after the FBI, going after the Justice Department, even though it's his Justice Department they're throwing a lot of these things.
It was where
So
the investigation started, man.
yeah,
It was under
right. So
bar.
it's crazy to hear their logic, and if you are just an outside person observing this circus, you are saying, "Oh my God, I don't want to be a part of that." And this is the distrust that is fomented by this nonsense. People look at it and say, I don't want anything to do with that.
When Linda and I were last, when we were in Europe, when we were in Spain and Portugal, particularly, we had conversations with our guides and people on the street, people in the restaurants and stuff like that, and they ask, I said, because I asked them, how is it? You got to pay high taxes and all that, but how is your medical care? How's the educational system, particularly at the higher end, higher university level education? And they said they just started charging tuition at higher education recently, right? Because of inflation and the bad economy. And they said, but healthcare is really good, and they described to us different situations in their own personal lives where they've been taken care of by healthcare. Why do you ask? Is the question. I said, well, in the United States, they don't want socialized medicine. I mean, they say, we don't want to be like the Europeans. And then they look at each other and they look back at us and go, they don't want to be like Europeans. What do they mean? They see Europeans as having socialized medicine, and it's a bad thing. And they keep saying you guys are dropping dead because you don't get health care when you need it. It's late, it's bad, etc. And they look at us and say, they really believe that? And I said, yes, they do.
Yeah.
And they vote accordingly.
But the thing is, healthcare in the United States is too capitalistic.
It's kidding.
It's too profit. It's too. I mean, that's why they're the biggest.
Okay.
They're the biggest.
You gotta start spelling your last name with a hammer and sickle instead of a G.
Well, no. I mean, the thing is, if we all agree on one thing, though, people like Medicare, and that's why Medicare for all.
They like Obamacare too.
Yeah. I mean, it's more reasonable. I mean, it's not that it has some, inconsistencies or some imperfections,
well,
but
it pays too low. It pays so low that a lot of doctors don't take Medicare.
Right.
They do what I call flying naked, right? They don't take insurance. Basically, they become their own insurers, right? It's concierge medicine, and so you got to be able to afford it. And so, people that make, by whatever means, $1 million or more, and there's a lot of that in California, on an annual basis, they can afford.
Yeah. Well,
medicine.
All right. So look, all right. Now we got off talking medicine, but look, this is the thing.
But we have to. It affects everything.
Right.
If you keep voting for Republicans, they're going to keep cutting.
Yeah. Okay? This is the important policy that we need, and unfortunately, what we have people voting Republican who vote against their self-interest. This is why when we talked about the unions the other day, when Biden, was out there in front of the, joined the strike, and what did Trump do? He went to a non-union event and tried to act like he was for the strikers.
No, he did not support the strikes. He said what he did was he supported labor.
Right.
He's for the workers. He's for the workers. But he said, there's other ways to deal with this.
Oh, you're talking about Biden, right? You're talking about Biden.
No.
Oh, you're talking about Trump. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, Trump didn't support the strike, but he went to a non-union.
That's right. And then pretended that he's for labor.
Yeah. So, and now there's talking out of both sides of your mouth. Okay, look.
Well, but see, he hired what? He hired questionable people with questionable immigration status at all of his businesses.
Yeah. And we're going to see what he's going to pay for the in this fraud trial, what kind of business he can run after the penalty phase.
Well, the big thing is they've already lost certification.
Oh yeah, yeah. He can't.
They
I mean,
can't even trade right now. They cannot trade. I mean, I don't know how you can run a business or continue to run a business if you can't even contract, right?
yeah.
For basic services and for supplies. And they can't do anything now.
He's
It's
gonna
in
have to.
receivership. They can't move.
It's
So
gonna have
it's
to
going
be
to
a
be very interesting to see what happens.
Donald Trump branded nonprofit. That's
it's been nonprofit, but
yeah.
not in a good way.
Yeah. All right, so now let's move into this thing coming up this weekend on Thursday, on Friday, and or Saturday and Sunday on October 7th and 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific. There's this webinar that the Filipino American National Historical Society is having, and it's Filipino American History 101. This, if you haven't noticed, is Filipino American History Month, October, or into October 4th. All of October is Filipino American History Month. And what do people know about Filipino American history? Dan, our Filipino American history professor emeritus, what do people generally know about Filipino American history? Anything?
uh, hmm. Probably, if we're talking about current generations,
Yeah.
the younger generation may have had in a state like California or Washington or Hawaii,
Mhm.
right? They may have had some a little bit of ethnic studies.
Well,
Remember those when they in the 70s they started cultural awareness kind
yeah.
of week,
Yeah. But
and so you got to bring out all of the ethnic stuff, and
yeah.
families brought out some food, they brought out the dances,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
usual, yeah, that kind of thing. Okay, so they may have learned a little bit about it, and now because of media,
Mhm.
they know that Filipinos were involved in the formation of the UFW. And it was not only Cesar Chavez. There are
Mhm.
people who are recognizing now Itliong, but they don't know Veracruz. Who was just he actually stayed with the UFW longer
Yeah.
than Itliong did. He stayed on it until he retired in like 77 or 78. Itliong left in 70 or 71.
Yeah.
But
So, I mean,
they may know something about Carlos Bolosan. Even Filipinos, Filipino Americans, Filipino X, however you want to say it, right?
yeah. Well, look, if
Even they don't know Carlos Bolosan.
well, if you look, and it's clear why Carlos Bulasan wrote in the 20s and 30s, and most Filipinos who are younger were born in the what 80s, 90s,
Yeah, yeah,
2000s. If they don't get it in school, and their parents don't know about it because their parents are recent immigrants who came, you know, 80s, 90s, 2000s. You say Carlos Bulasan, and no one will know Carlos Bulasan.
yeah. I
They,
have
they
to.
barely will know Larry Itliong
He,
unless,
he, he wrote in the 30s and 40s more than anything, 40s and 50s especially. His book and his perspective was given a lot of support from the far left,
yeah.
from the radicals and left radicals and socialists,
Mm.
because he was socialist himself.
Right. And that's probably another reason why a lot of people kind of push him aside,
Yeah, they
perhaps.
don't want to have
So,
anything to do with those commies.
right. Even though he was an original voice and he was heralded in some mainstream circles in
Yes,
the 40s and 50s.
yes,
And, but he died penniless, right?
right,
I
right.
mean, Carlos Bulasan. I mean, he
His,
is
his his book didn't get a lot of attention until the late 60s and early 70s
after his death.
because of the establishment of ethnic studies programs.
Right. And see that's kind of the thing about our Filipino American voices. They aren't generally known or heard, and this is the importance of Filipino American History Month. And the Filipino American National Historical Society is putting together this free webinar Saturday and Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific. Dorothy Cordova, who's the president of FONS, she's going to do Saturday, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to do 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday, and joined by my guest here, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez. We both will have numerous panels going on of people telling stories, their personal stories about how their personal stories intermingle with the Filipino American history. I believe it's an engaging way to tell the Filipino American story. It's free. You can participate. You can listen, and there's a little showing a little question answer afterwards. But it's a 4 to 6 p.m. thing, and it goes from the beginning of Filipino American history to World War II. I come on Sunday and do post World War II to the present. And as Dorothy told me, Emil, that's the tough part because there's still some disagreements about what's going on. So I welcome people to sign up, and let me put the sign up. The sign up is if you're watching this on YouTube or watching this on Facebook, you see the link to the form to sign up. It's free. Sign up, become part of this October 7th and 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. It's a webinar. It's Filipino American History 101, and it's a free webinar. We go from the beginning of Filipino American history to World War II on Saturday, and then my bit is post World War II to the present. So I think you should go to both, but if you had to choose one, you should go to Sunday. I think. I think
Yeah, you should go to both. I mean, you have a better understanding of what we're talking about on Sunday if you also watch what's going on and listen to what's going on Saturday. That's really the complete way to go.
Yeah, and Saturday talking about how the first Filipinos came here from the very beginning, 1587 to the present. I think, or actually to modern. Well, 1898, 1920. That's not exactly modern times, but in uh, you know, it takes you from that period to 1945, 1950, and then we take it from 45, 50 to 2023. And so it'll give you the complete picture about what's going on with the community. And we're 4 million strong Filipino Americans in the United States. We are no longer, I think we're still number 3. But the Indians are number 1 in terms of
Yeah, that was fast, wasn't it?
Asians, Asian alone. Indians number 1, then Chinese. And I think it's the same thing that's happened to the Japanese, right? It's the out marriages, right?
Yeah, yeah. Also, immigration rate.
Well, the Indians are
Yeah,
immigrating faster, but the out marriage rate for Chinese. I mean, look at Zuckerberg, right? Look at the Filipinos. I mean, it's
yeah.
sort of following the line of the Japanese Americans who are saying, where are the Japanese Americans? We're out marrying, and there's so many more Indians,
Yeah,
right?
they were really upset about that in the '70s, but
Yeah,
since it has not really panned out. I mean, clearly there's still a Japanese American community,
yeah,
even if people are of mixed heritage. They still celebrate their Japaneseness.
yeah,
It's a very strong cultural phenomenon. The
yeah,
same thing is true of Filipinos. We
yeah,
outmarriage like crazy, and it's typically the women that outmarry, and but their kids of mixed heritage come out claiming Filipino-ness.
yeah,
They talk about the food, they talk about the culture, particularly the old folk culture,
yeah.
right? The dancing, all that kind of cultural stuff. They don't necessarily learn the language, but the reason is a lot of people don't are not native speakers of Tagalog. They had to learn it because it was the national language,
Yeah.
but their home language was another language separate and apart from Tagalog.
Well, it's like my father is from Ilocos Norte, a different province from northern Luzon, so he spoke Ilocano. My mother is Tagalog from the center part of Luzon, so she was near Manila. They married. They couldn't speak anything. The common language was English,
English, yeah,
and then later the common language was Filipino, right?
yeah,
Which was
yeah,
kind of like a mixture.
yeah,
And then actually they both spoke their own language amongst their own people,
yes.
Tagalog, Ilocano, and me, I just ended up speaking accented English, like my father. So uh, it's amazing how.
Well, you've done a fine job of ridding yourself.
Yeah, right.
That,
Well,
that is,
it's interesting how the younger people, they find the way in, the point of least resistance, right? Food and
yeah,
folk dancing, and that gets them into the culture. And then afterwards, boom, then they're in. And
right.
so, uh,
Thank goodness they're not doing the tats as much as they used to.
yeah. Well, I think that Filipino American History Month is important because suddenly you understand who these people are. I mean, we're not Mexican, we're not Chinese, we're not Cuban, we're not Central American. A lot of people don't know. They
Yeah,
don't. Filipinos. But what they know is they know Marcos.
right. And they know we do karaoke.
Karaoke, and we fight with sticks. We like to fight with
Well, I
sticks.
guess a few know now. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. When we explain to them that the sticks are so that we don't cut each other's arms off
yeah,
without meaning to,
yeah.
that then it gets strange.
We fight with sticks.
I got a lot of us, when we were younger, and we were starting to, use arnis and eskrima and learn that. Um, a lot of the East Asian traditions that have their own martial arts that are more popular, right, and played up in the entertainment media and all that stuff. They
Yeah,
said Filipinos have a martial art.
I
You
know
know,
that people didn't know.
I
I
said,
mean,
that's quasi racist, man.
yeah,
You know,
quasi. Yeah, that's why I say Filipinos. We are the Rodney Dangerfield of the BIPOC community.
see now, nobody's gonna know who the fuck Rodney Dangerfield is, man.
Well, he's the
You got to
we're
say, I get no respect, no respect.
those are,
That was that
we
was
know
that
people
was
are gonna know who
Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield. People saw Caddyshack. They saw
Yeah, that's
Caddyshack.
true. That's true.
They saw
Caddyshack revived him.
Caddyshack
Yeah,
more than they saw any
that's true.
Filipino American film or Filipino American historical film. By the way, did you see 1521? Did you go to your AMC theater like I suggested on October 2nd and see 1521?
I did not.
Okay, I did. I did. I was one of four people in the theater.
Oh no!
Yeah, it
And
was.
where did you go? What city were you
I
in?
went. I was in San Joaquin County, and I saw it there. Uh, it had mixed results throughout the country, but I saw the movie, and Magellan does get Danny Trejo plays the bad guy. You know who Danny. When you see Danny
Yeah,
Trejo,
yeah.
he's bad. He's the
He's a
badass
great guy.
Mexican.
Great guy.
Good character actor.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
plays Magellan.
Owns a
Gets
couple of
it
nice
at-
restaurants in L.A. too.
Yeah, and there's a kind of a love story involved. There's got to be a love story. People want to see a love story,
It
and
wouldn't be Filipino without it.
yeah, and it's not. Uh, I would say I'm going to be charitable. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10 stars, maybe 6.5. It's better than you would think. It's a strong story. There are still moments that are worth seeing. People don't know this story, and you need to see it. So I jump it up to 7 out of 10, 10 stars. I don't know if it's. Here's the thing. I don't know if 1521 is going to have another shot at being seen in the theaters. It might be on Netflix. It might be on some streaming channel. But maybe the best shot. I mean, I talked to the producer, and the producer said, "Look, Joe Coy, who's big star now, he was backed by Spielberg, and his movie Easter Sunday got like no traction at all. So when that happens, you know that these guys who are behind 1521 have an uphill battle. That's why I'm going to give 1521 7 stars. See it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. When was the last film about Magellan that you saw that was out there? I mean, it's important. It's
Yeah,
important to
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah.
So Dan, one more word on Filipino American history. Why, if you were to tell people they have to go to Filipino American History 101, free webinar sponsored by the Filipino American National Historical Society on this month, October, Filipino American History Month. Why would you say people should see or be part of this webinar and get?
It's a potentially it's an extremely ripe opportunity. rare, rare moment where you get so many people who have the capacity to link both personal experience and perspective and actual documented history together, okay, and talk about it. There is a conflict on sometimes on facts, but most of the time on interpretation
Mhm.
of those facts and what their meaning is for Filipinos in the country. If you are Filipino in any way, shape, partial, or form, or if you care about people who are Filipino, okay, you really should see this event. You should. I recommend very strongly that you see both parts. It's 2 hours out of your day, okay, and hopefully it starts after the most of your games.
Yeah. Well, it's just one half of football each day. So
Yeah, yeah.
think of the
But
time
that's
that
it.
you would spend.
But that's it.
You know,
And you just hit the recorder, man. Hit
yeah.
the recorder. Have a little patience. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people are so totally in the dark when it comes to Filipino American history. They don't know, and they don't know that Filipino American history is American history.
It,
And
it is more American than people realize.
oh yeah,
The United States was heavily involved in Asia at the time, and the place that they decided they made the same decision that the Spanish did. They
yeah,
needed the Philippines because it was a great place to have a base of operations for trade and military, right?
yeah,
That because it gave you access to the whole coast of East Asia,
yeah.
you know.
Now
So there it was, and it
it
also was rich in minerals, right?
and
Which are still being exploited to this day. It's one of the major reasons for corruption and everything else in the Philippines.
and
Okay.
it's also very rich in first and second generation karaoke machines. They've got all these karaoke machines. Uh, no, I
Yeah,
ca-
you don't want to go to the joints that cater to Korean and Japanese
oh
tourists
yeah,
there
yeah.
because a little bit too much involvement with mirrors there,
All
you
right,
know.
all right. Now, Raisa, one of our listeners, she says, "Where can I sign up?" Well, right there on the screen. If you're on YouTube right now,
Yeah.
wherever you're watching on Facebook, you go to the link there, https colon double backslash forums.glc. I'm not going to read it out, but it's there.
Okay. Yeah.
Also,
It's right underneath my chin.
oh, here's the other way to do it. Go to amok.com right now on my website, and there's a link to get you to the form. Fill it
Okay.
out. You're
Okay.
ready. You go to amok.com. Now, Dan is going to amok.com. Right there on my website, you will see where you can go to the link and 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 sign up. Now, Ray says, "Are you going to talk about how Filipino veterans were screwed over by the USA in terms of retirement?" Of course, we'll talk about that. But
Well,
it's
but
not.
but you got to make a distinction, though. Okay, this is one
Oh,
of those problems with what people understand about that history.
yeah,
The people who were screwed were the Filipinos who were not veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. They were not members of the Marines, the Navy,
all right,
the Air Corps. It was the Army Air Corps or the
right.
Army.
They were
Okay,
the Philippine
rather they were
Scouts.
Philippine, yes, and they were USAFED. They were members of the U.S. Armed Forces in the Far East, which included guerrillas as well. And so the people who were initially offered benefits as well as the opportunity for citizenship if they chose, right, were after a year of that offer having been out there, right, were
Right.
denied in December of 46. And that's when those are the people who got screwed.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
father, my
Yeah.
father and everybody of my age group that I know that migrated here and whose mothers came here in the 10 years after the war between 45 and 55, right? They all got benefits.
Yeah.
They
So
bought
I
their
mean,
first homes on those benefits.
yeah, I always mention the fact that it's the guys in the Philippines who signed up, and
That's right.
they were heeding the call. But the people here in the United States who are here already, they got benefits if they signed up to the army. And we have some people who signed up for both. They were guerrillas as well as members of the U.S. Army,
Yeah,
as fate
yeah,
would have it. Now, there are some people who are unique, like my father, who did not participate in the military. And I'd like to say it's because he was a pacifist and he was a peacenik and he was out there with Bob Dylan saying, "Make love, not war." But no,
It would have been Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie, yeah.
Yeah.
But what my father was for F, and because of that, it determined my life, his life, my father's life, and my life as because there's no access to GI Bill, which was the first affirmative action available to
Yes.
Filipinos, and
Available to everybody. It was
and
an
this
affirmative
is
action program that cut across racial and class lines.
and this is World War II. This is post World War II Filipino American history that is much more American than Filipino, but Filipinos were caught in this. They're caught by this, or they
Well, they were caught by racism.
Yeah. Well, racism plays a big role, and that's going to come out too. So we'll talk about that, of course, and then my big thing is we're going to talk about Marcos. We got to talk about Marcos because Marcos really has determined post World War II Filipino American history much more than anyone gives him credit.
Yeah, hopefully we will do that in a concise yet accurate manner.
Well, let's hope we have people coming from different perspectives, mostly anti-Marcos. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of pro-Marcos, but even within the anti-Marcos crowd, there's some differences of opinions. So anyway,
is Renee on our panel?
Yes, I believe so. Renee Syracuse on our panel. So it's going to be an interesting time, informative. It's going to be, I hope, engaging, and
it'll also be fun. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff. I mean, it's not all just serious politics and history. A lot of it is fun. I mean, we can't. We got to. You mentioned Jokoi, and you mentioned his flop movie, which I was kind of happy it was a flop. I didn't like it.
Well, I didn't see it. I'd like to see him do. I like to see Jokoi do well. Because Rising.
I think we should get together and hustle a couple of our friends for some money and do a really good comedy on Filipino stuff. I mean, it would be easy to do. I mean,
all right, off camera, we'll do that. I think
also, can we talk to Arlen Hughes?
Yeah,
I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, Arlen's a good friend.
She wants to see what you wrote about Deep Throat. So do I.
Yeah, well, I wrote it in high school. I think I have it in some box in a closet.
Oh man, you haven't digitized it?
I haven't digitized it, but
that's platinum, man. It's platinum.
but I do recall that talking or experiencing Dianne Feinstein in Deep Throat. I believe in the same. I think I said in the same week, because I don't know how I would have been able to see Deep Throat, say, on a school night, unless I saw Dianne Feinstein on Friday, and then Friday night I somehow was able to watch Deep Throat. But you recall, it's a Linda Lovelace movie. It was a big thing at the time, and
porn and soft porn was so big back then, man.
Yeah, well, I only point out Feinstein because she is this Maggie Thatcher. She wasn't a liberal. She was more like
she was definitely conservative. I call her a dino, Democrat in name only. She was really a centrist.
She was kind of this matron like, almost like the word prude comes to mind. I mean, even young Dianne Feinstein, as attractive as she might have been.
No.
You wouldn't say, she was. You'd say
her skirts were at the knee, man. I mean, I don't recall her ever wearing a skirt or a dress that was above the knee. Okay.
Look, she
never had, bosom out, no cleavage.
Look, I'm not trying to sexualize her.
Bows, these huge bows. Remember that?
Look, I'm not trying to sexualize. I'm just saying that she had a demeanor that was very conservative. Remember, she used to wear these bows.
That's what I said. I
wore these bows.
Yeah, that was her substitute for cleavage.
It was her trademark, and I just think that with Dianne, I was making a statement that here I was, this young Filipino kid in high school, not yearning, but I watched Deep Throat. I was in shock after I saw that and then seeing Dianne Feinstein speak, she was only a member of the board of supervisors at the time. It was shocking.
The
I felt like, oh man,
contrast was too much to take.
I must confess. So anyway, look, yeah. So we bring up Dianne Feinstein again. Look, she was.
It was the sauna into ice water.
Yeah,
From the sauna into ice water.
Dianne Feinstein. She was of that San Francisco leadership kind of. She was in that group, and and you could say Pelosi was in that group, and Quentin Kopp. There are all these guys who now, but where were the young voices and the diverse voices? They didn't develop them. I mean,
well, Molinari was younger.
Molinari was younger. I just know
Agnos, Molinari.
Agnos, yeah.
Some of the guys, Mosconi was younger.
Well, the guys who came out after that were people like Tom Amiano.
Yeah.
There were, look at the board of supervisors.
Who's the guy that had the clothing line?
Boy, I forget.
Yeah,
I know. There was, and then there was Asian Americans.
It was liberal.
But
they were largely appointed by the more liberal folks, including Feinstein. I mean, in that regard, she was really good at making appointments.
Ed Lee.
She was really good at making appointments.
I think of the guys now, although I think he likes where he is as city attorney, but David Chu, is there. But you look at people like London Breed. Man, you cannot compare Dianne Feinstein and London Breed, or London Breed to Dianne. Two different people.
Yeah, but you couldn't even do Lee. You couldn't even do Ed. In comparison to DiFi, there's nobody even like that.
Yeah.
The closest you're going to get is the guy that you just threw some shade on, which is Mr. Newsom.
Well, and Newsom was seen as the.
Yeah, he was a member of that crew. I mean, one of the things that you haven't mentioned is DiFi's class level.
You're right. Look, Newsom was part of that whole Pacific Heights crowd.
Yeah.
And if you're part of the Pacific Heights crowd, the town school, Catherine Burke's school,
University High,
that whole crowd, they were the leaders. And this is why the guy who's coming up now, who's posing a challenge to London Breed, a white guy from sort of cut from that same cloth, from that Pacific Heights crowd. I forget his name.
Money. Lurie.
Oh, Lurie. Yeah, he's a Lurie. So, maybe I don't, but see, the city has changed also. The city isn't the same city that voted for Dianne Feinstein. The city has changed so much. So, so we remember Dianne Feinstein here at the end. Remember what she stood for, and it's sad. It's sad because this is part of the change. Where San Francisco is going, who knows? I'm not even. I don't live in the city anymore, so I just look at it from afar and say, "Ooh, I just hope they don't get it wrong."
Yeah, but you come here all the time, and so even though you're not an immediate player, you're more than an observer.
Oh yeah, all right, that's true. I come into the city a lot, but
and then we do this show, and we're always on the issues.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen to San Francisco. I don't know what's next. But I do know that Filipino American History Month, Saturday and Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. You got to go to amok.com, and you can click on the link and get the link. And if you're watching, there's the link right there on YouTube or
HTTPS //forums
.glc.
Yeah,
and then into the
caps. You got to be careful with whether or not it's caps or lowercase.
You can freeze it. And then make a copy.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, freeze it, or just go to amok.com.
That's the easiest thing to do is Amok.
Yeah. And then on that first page, I put a link up and you can click and go there.
Amok.com.
No, you went to that. You went to my link, right? It works,
There's
right?
people who I did.
No, did you?
No.
amok.com?
Okay, I'll do it now.
Yeah. And then the link is right there. And then just click on it and it's right there on the first page. Can't miss it. And it's good. And
I was looking up Deep Throat, but
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Deep Throat right now would be considered tame. Considered tame.
Yeah, it was. There was other stuff at the time. That's right. Deep Throat
Behind,
was. Yeah,
behind the green door.
yeah. There was some heavy duty stuff
Mitchell's.
back then, and it was starting to get pretty sick.
Yeah. Well,
Remember the snuff films and stuff.
oh yeah. Well,
was
see,
bad.
I was just a high schooler. I wasn't into I wasn't a connoisseur. It's not like,
Neither
not
was
like
I. I was in law school, and we were looking at the definition of pornographic, films. So
yeah.
that's why
It's not yeah.
it
It's
wasn't
not
like I was studying. It was
yeah,
deep into
yeah. Be able to define prurient. Yeah, that's the key
prurient.
word.
Prurient. What
Prurient.
is prurient?
Prurient. It it's a
It's
suggestive.
it's a Republican manifest.
Yeah. It's highly persuasive. Prurient. All right, so Dan. All right, that's it. We're going to say goodbye for now. We're going to repeat this. If you're watching on the repeat, check it out. Friday, Saturday, October 7th and 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. Filipino American History 101. It's free. I host the second day, Sunday. Dorothy Cordova, the president of FONS, hosts the first day. It should be fun. It should be informative. You'll learn about Filipino American history. All right. So, Dan, thank you, Dan, for being here. And we'll see you on Sunday. And we'll talk before. But
yeah. I'll be watching on Saturday too.
yeah.
I'll probably chime in on something when we get live.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank
So-
you to Raisa and Arlen too, also for participating in our discussion. And I am going back to Deep Throat.
Yeah. Well, Raisa says David Byrne just added a dance party to Here Lies Love to increase ticket sales. Here's the thing. That show cost $22 million on Broadway. And I have seen it, and you can go see my review on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. I liked it. I think it's worthy. I think it has a kind of a classics illustrated comics book feel to it with great music. So that's good. The actors are good. I love the actors, male and female. The males very strong, and so are the females. But if you aren't exposed or don't know this story, you need to see it. And that's really the best thing to say.
Well, that was Leia Salonga's position. Is this is it's historical.
Yeah, this is an important thing for the Filipino American community, and also in terms of the information. So go see it. I mean, it's more historical and more meaningful than watching Les Miserables. Now, was Les Miserables better?
There you go.
Was I mean, you can,
and if you can't see it, you can get clips of it if you're careful on YouTube.
Well, yeah,
just put it in there, and you can get clips of it, and you can get whole songs.
Yeah.
I was able to get whole songs, and so the words, the lyrics to those songs really give you the story.
Yeah. Well, but remember, the story. This is the gateway. This is the gateway to history.
Yep.
And it's worth it. And the thing that I didn't know that Benigno Aquino and Emil DeMarcos had a thing before.
Okay.
I didn't, and I also didn't know.
Careful with the finger gestures.
Yeah, I didn't know about. I didn't know about
meaning in the Philippines. What you just did.
Yeah, well, no, they didn't have. It's more like that. But I did
that's
also
an orgy right there. Is an orgy.
Yeah.
Multiple.
I also didn't know that Ferdinand Marcos had a love child.
Oh, and Raisa says it's on iTunes that you can get the whole soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Who had a love child?
Marcos.
With whom?
A white woman. I forget her name. It's mentioned.
Not Dovey Beams.
I think, yeah, wasn't it?
that was oh God, I can't. Can I say this on TV?
No, no,
Uh,
no, no, don't.
no, well, she was called the 19th hole.
Oh, I see. Oh, you can say that. That's fine. That's fine. 19th hole.
Yeah,
Oh,
because he had a little place set up for her. Porn star.
well,
Yes, yes, she was.
yeah.
Raisa,
So,
how do you know all this? Raisa is starting to show she may, you work for the CIA or NSA or who do you work for? Anyway.
so, all right. So, Dan, all right. So, we're going to go. So, people show up, sign up, Fonz, Filipino American History 101, October 7th and 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. There's a link. Sign up now. It's free and go to it. Dan, good to see you as always.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and we'll,
Regards.
we'll talk.
Hugs to Kath.
Yeah. And we'll talk to you again soon. There he goes, my friend, Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Professor Emeritus, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University. All right, that's our show for today. We're just going to repeat this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then sign up for the 101 Saturday and Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific. And there's the link. Go to amok.com also if you can't get a clear shot of the link here. All right. Hey, we do this Monday through Friday. We put it up. Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Thank you for watching. We also like to end with a little meditation. And so we're going to do that today. A little loving kindness. It always pays. I mean, you want to like fair shot, but a little loving kindness is the best way. And it starts out, it's just saying, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Sign up for that 101, the 7th and 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. Webinar, free, Zoom. You can be anywhere. amok.com. You can click and register. Free. Till next time. The only Tagalog I say in the show, at the end, guaranteed. Mahal kita.